The alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., but Madison Wright was already awake, staring at the ceiling of her Spartan apartment bedroom. Today was the day she'd been dreading for months. Her final qualification test at Highland Peak Military Training Facility, the most elite sniper school in the country, where she was the only woman in her class. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. As a former Olympic biathlon champion and tactical instructor, Madison had built a reputation for her unshakable composure and extraordinary accuracy, traits that had earned her this coveted spot in the advanced sniper program. Her morning routine was methodical: black coffee, equipment check, mental preparation. The Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle didn't belong to her officially, but after 3 months of training, it felt like an extension of her body. The massive rifle was a marvel of engineering, precision machined components, advanced optics, and the ability to hit targets with devastating accuracy at distances most shooters couldn't even see. Still confident about today, right? Her roommate's voice carried from the kitchen as Madison packed her gear. At 32, Melissa Torres had served 2 tours overseas as a combat medalist before joining the instructor team. General Harrington doesn't exactly have a reputation for being fair to female candidates. Madison continued packing her equipment with deliberate focus. "I've outshot every other trainee in the program," she replied, carefully arranging her custom ammunition in its specialized case. Each round had been meticulously inspected and tested for optimal performance in the specific conditions they'd face today. "If the general wants to fail me, he'll need to find a better reason than my gender." Melissa's sigh was heavy with experience. "It's not about your skill, and you know it." Harrington's from the old guard. 25 years of believing women don't belong in combat roles, especially not elite sniper positions. The rumor is he's never passed a female candidate, regardless of qualification scores. Madison had heard the stories. General Victor Harrington was a decorated war hero with an impeccable military record and outdated views that had somehow survived multiple Pentagon diversity initiatives. Highland Peak was his domain, where his word was law and his personal approval was required for graduation. As the first woman to make it to the final qualification in 3 years, Madison had felt his cold scrutiny from day one. The drive to the isolated mountain range was tense with anticipation. The morning mist clung to the winding road as Madison's Jeep climbed higher into the rugged terrain. Her mind wandered to the newspaper article she'd clipped and kept in her wallet, the announcement of the advanced tactical sniper position opening with Delta Force. First, she had to graduate from Highland Peak with General Harrington's approval, something no woman had managed to accomplish in the program's 15-year history. What the general and his traditional-minded instructors couldn't see, what they'd never understand, was the quiet determination that had carried Madison through years of competition and training. The same focus that had earned her Olympic medals now fueled her mission to break barriers in military special operations. Her worn combat fatigues and regulation haircut didn't scream revolutionary, but every qualified female operator who succeeded opened doors for those who would follow. The training facility's imposing gates appeared through the thinning mist as dawn broke over the mountains. Madison's stomach tightened with anticipation, but her hands remained steady on the wheel. Today would indeed be a test, but not the kind the general expected. Highland Peak Military Training Facility sprawled across a remote mountain plateau that screamed exclusivity and elite status. Madison's standard-issue Jeep looked out of place next to the row of polished military vehicles with special operations insignia. The facility's architecture was brutally functional: concrete, steel, and bulletproof glass designed to create the next generation of America's most lethal long-distance operators. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The main building interior was spartan and intimidating. The walls displayed photographs of distinguished graduates in combat zones, medals of honor, and the unit's numerous commendations. Madison noted, without surprise, that not a single woman appeared in any of the framed accomplishments. The registration desk was staffed by a young corporal whose expression hardened slightly when he saw her approach. "Identification," he stated, flatly, not looking up from his computer. Madison presented her military ID without comment. The corporal's eyes flicked up, taking in her appearance with barely concealed skepticism. "Final qualification candidates report to Range 7. The general will be overseeing today's assessments personally." Madison maintained her professional composure, having prepared for this moment for years. As she processed the information, the corporal's condescending expression deepened. "You know this isn't the standard marksmanship test, right?" He slid a final waiver form across the counter. "Today's qualification involves extreme distance targeting under combat stress conditions. Maybe you should reconsider." "I'm aware of the requirements," Madison said calmly, signing the waiver with steady hands. She'd expected this, the immediate assumption that she didn't belong, that she couldn't handle the demands of elite sniper training. The walk across the facility felt like entering hostile territory. Conversation stopped as she passed groups of male trainees and instructors. She caught whispered comments and poorly concealed smirks. Harrington's going to eat her alive, and waste of training resources reached her ears. But Madison maintained her forward focus, the specialized rifle case slung across her back like armor. Range 7 was situated at the highest point of the facility, a sprawling shooting complex designed to simulate the most challenging combat environments. When Madison arrived, 5 male candidates were already preparing their equipment under the watchful eyes of 4 senior instructors. At the center of it all stood General Victor Harrington. Even at 63, Harrington commanded attention through sheer presence. 6'3" with iron-gray hair cropped close to his skull, his chest decorated with rows of combat medals, and eyes that had seen more war than most soldiers could imagine. Those cold blue eyes locked onto Madison the moment she stepped onto the range, narrowing slightly with unmistakable disapproval. Madison selected the station farthest from the group and began her methodical setup. She unfolded her shooting mat, assembled her spotting scope on its tripod, and carefully removed the Barrett 50 from its specialized case. Compared to the standard issue rifles around her, her weapon was identical in make and model, but she had spent countless hours understanding its every nuance, adjusting the stock to her frame, and customizing the trigger pull to her exact preference, all within regulation parameters. "Look what the diversity quota dragged in," a voice stage whispered from 2 stations down. Madison didn't react. She'd expected this reaction too. Instead, she continued her preparation, checking wind flags and adjusting her scope with practiced precision. She could feel the collective attention of the range on her, the skeptical instructors, the dismissive fellow candidates, and most intensely, General Harrington's disapproving glare burning into her back. "Someone should tell her this isn't the Olympics. There are no participation trophies in combat," another voice added, followed by suppressed laughter that carried easily across the otherwise professional range. Madison's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but her hands remained perfectly steady as she loaded her ammunition. Let them talk. Let them assume. On the range, only results mattered. And Madison Wright had been getting results since before most of these men had qualified for basic training. General Harrington commanded the attention of everyone present when he stepped to the center of the firing line. His physical presence was intimidating, a lifetime of military discipline evident in his rigid posture and commanding voice that needed no amplification to carry across the range. "Final qualification begins in 30 minutes, he announced, scanning the line of candidates with critical assessment. "Today's test consists of 3 phases: precision under time pressure, target acquisition in variable conditions, and stress response scenarios. Only the best proceed to Delta Force selection. His gaze lingered on Madison for a fraction longer than the others, his disapproval barely concealed behind military professionalism. Then he approached her station with deliberate, measured steps that announced his authority with every footfall. "Candidate Wright," he said, his voice carrying just enough to ensure nearby instructors could hear. "I've reviewed your file extensively. Impressive Olympic background, exceptional scores in preliminary qualifications." His tone suggested these accomplishments meant little to him. However, this program tests more than target shooting in controlled environments. This tests whether you can perform when lives depend on your judgment under extreme duress. Madison met his gaze directly, maintaining perfect military bearing. "Yes, sir. I understand the requirements, sir." Harrington's expression remained impassive as he studied her setup with critical eyes. The Barrett 50 is a specialized weapon, requiring significant upper body strength to manage recoil over extended operations. "Are you confident this is the appropriate platform for your physical capabilities?" The question was deliberately phrased to undermine her without being explicitly discriminatory. Madison had anticipated this exact line of questioning. "With respect, sir, I've logged 287 hours with this specific platform with an accuracy rating of 97.8% at extreme distances. My recoil management scores exceed program requirements by 12%. The general's eyes narrowed slightly at her precisely detailed response. He clearly hadn't expected such thorough preparation for his challenge. By now, several instructors had drifted closer, drawn by the confrontation between the legendary general and the female candidate who dared to speak with such confidence. Captain Reynolds, the head marksmanship instructor, approached with a clipboard. A 20-year veteran with a distinguished service record, Reynolds had been professionally courteous to Madison throughout training, neither supportive nor overtly hostile. "General, should we begin with the standard qualification course of fire?" Harrington's attention remained fixed on Madison. "No, Captain. I believe we should start with the stress test scenario. Let's see how our candidates perform under pressure before we waste time on basic marksmanship." The change in protocol was obvious to everyone present. The stress test was typically administered last after candidates had established baseline accuracy scores. Starting with the most challenging portion first was a transparent attempt to weed out candidates early, specifically to eliminate Madison before she could demonstrate her exceptional accuracy. Reynolds hesitated momentarily. "Sir, standard protocol suggests." "Are you questioning my assessment, Captain?" Harrington interrupted, his tone leaving no room for further discussion. "No, sir. Preparing stress test scenario now, sir." Reynolds turned to the range officers, issuing commands to reset the course. Madison kept her expression neutral, but internally she recalculated her approach. The stress test involved physical exertion to elevate heart rate and simulate combat. Conditions followed immediately by precision shooting at variable distances. Starting with this challenge would put all candidates at a disadvantage, but the general was clearly hoping it would affect her disproportionately. As the range officers reconfigured the course, Major Blackwell, Harrington's executive officer, approached Madison's station. Unlike the general, Blackwell's hostility wasn't hidden behind a veneer of professionalism. "Right, when you wash out today, and you will, remember it was your own arrogance that put you here. Women have no place in elite sniper units. It's not discrimination, it's biological reality." Madison didn't acknowledge his comment, continuing her equipment check with methodical precision. Her silence seemed to irritate Blackwell more than any response could have. "The general is being generous even allowing you this attempt," he continued. voice low enough that only she could hear. "Your presence here is political theater, nothing more. A waste of resources that could have gone to a qualified candidate." When Madison still didn't respond, Blackwell leaned closer. "Your Olympic medals and political connections won't help you when you're carrying a 50-pound rifle through mountain terrain under enemy fire. Nature designed you for different purposes." "Right. The sooner you accept that, the less embarrassment for everyone involved." Madison finally looked up, meeting his gaze with calm confidence that visibly unsettled him. "Is there something specific about my equipment setup that concerns you, Major? Otherwise, I'd appreciate the opportunity to complete my pre-qualification checks according to protocol." Before Blackwell could respond, General Harrington's voice boomed across the range. "Candidates, gear up for immediate deployment to Stress Course Alpha. Full combat load, weapons secured. Double time, people." The Stress Course was a grueling half-mile obstacle course designed to elevate heart rates to combat levels before requiring precision shooting. It involved wall climbs, crawls through muddy tunnels, and a punishing uphill sprint while carrying full combat gear and their sniper rifles. As Madison secured her equipment and prepared to move out, she noticed Harrington watching her with cold calculation. This wasn't just about testing her capabilities. This was about breaking her. About proving his long-held belief that women didn't belong in elite combat roles, regardless of their qualifications or abilities. What the general failed to understand was that Madison Wright had spent her entire life being underestimated. From her early biathlon competitions where coaches suggested she switch to less demanding sports, through Olympic trials where commentators questioned her endurance, to military training where instructors constantly expected her to quit, doubt had been her constant companion and motivation. The stress course began with a 3-minute warning horn. Madison positioned herself at the starting line alongside 5 male candidates, all carrying their sniper rifles and full combat loads weighing approximately 65 pounds. The Barrett 50 alone weighed nearly 30 pounds, a deliberate choice by Harrington to maximize physical disadvantage based on average strength differences. "Begin." The command sent all 6 candidates charging forward into the grueling course. Madison paced herself strategically, knowing that conservation of energy would be critical for the shooting portion that followed. 2 candidates immediately sprinted ahead, falling into the common trap of burning too much energy too soon. The first obstacle was a 12-foot wall with a single rope. Madison approached it methodically, securing her rifle across her back before beginning her climb. Above her, one of the front-runners was already struggling, his arms shaking from the combination of the wall climb and the heavy rifle. Madison maintained steady progress, her years of cross-country ski training providing the muscular endurance this challenge demanded. Moving through the course with tactical efficiency, Madison navigated the barbed wire crawl, water obstacles, and rope bridges while maintaining awareness of her position relative to other candidates. 3/4 through the course, she had moved into 3rd position, with the 2 early leaders showing significant signs of fatigue. As they approached the final obstacle, a steep incline carrying full gear, Madison caught a glimpse of General Harrington and his staff observing from an elevated position. The general's expression was unreadable, but his focus was entirely on her performance. The final sprint up the incline separated the field decisively. Madison's measured pace and efficient energy utilization allowed her to overtake the 2nd place candidate, whose early burst of speed had left him depleted. She finished the course 2nd overall, just 15 seconds behind the leader, Staff Sergeant Miller, a former Navy SEAL with exceptional physical conditioning. Without pausing for rest, range officers directed the candidates to their shooting positions, target acquisition and neutralization, multiple distances. Captain Reynolds announced, "You will engage targets appearing at random distances between 400 and 1,200 meters. Time and accuracy both factor in your qualification score. Madison dropped into position behind her rifle, controlling her elevated breathing using the same technique she'd mastered in biathlon competition. Her heart rate was elevated from the physical exertion, but her hands remained remarkably steady as she prepared for the first target presentation. The initial targets appeared at moderate ranges to 400 and 600 meters, challenging but well within the capabilities of qualified snipers. Madison engaged each with precision, her shots finding center mass despite her elevated heart rate and the sweat stinging her eyes. As the scenario progressed, targets appeared at increasingly difficult distances and positions. A 900-meter target, partially obscured by simulated foliage. An 1,100-meter target exposed for only 3 seconds before disappearing. Throughout the challenge, Madison maintained exceptional accuracy, her years of competitive shooting evident in every controlled trigger squeeze. From his observation position, General Harrington watched with growing discomfort as the female candidate he'd expected to fail was instead outperforming 4 of the 5 male candidates. Only Staff Sergeant Miller maintained comparable accuracy, though even he missed 2 long-distance targets that Madison successfully engaged. When the stress test concluded, the candidates were directed to report their ammunition expenditure and hits to range officers for scoring. Madison had achieved 93% accuracy under stress conditions, a nearly unprecedented score that placed her solidly in first position for this portion of the qualification. The general's displeasure was evident in his rigid posture as he consulted with Major Blackwell, their conversation too distant to overhear, but their body language suggesting intense disagreement. After several minutes, Harrington approached the firing line with Captain Reynolds. "Proceed to the precision qualification course," he ordered, his voice betraying no emotion. "Standard protocol, 5 shots at each distance station, maximum score 250 points. As Madison moved to retrieve her equipment, she noticed something different in how the other candidates regarded her. The dismissive smirks had been replaced by cautious reassessment. Staff Sergeant Miller, who had achieved the second highest stress test score, gave her a nearly imperceptible nod of professional respect. The precision course would be where Madison's exceptional marksmanship could truly separate her from the field. 5 shooting stations at progressively challenging distances: 600, 800, 1,000, 1,200, and 1,500 meters. Perfect shots at the furthest distances required calculations accounting for wind speed, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, and even the Earth's rotation for the extreme distances. As Madison prepared for the precision course, she felt a growing tension on the range. Her unexpected success in the stress test had disrupted the established narrative. General Harrington had intended to eliminate her early, to prevent her from showcasing her exceptional marksmanship skills. Now he would need to find another approach to justify rejecting her qualification. What Madison couldn't have anticipated was how far the general was willing to go to maintain his unbroken record of never allowing a woman to graduate from Highland Peak's elite sniper program, and the confrontation that would soon force her to choose between her military career and her principles. The precision qualification course unfolded beneath a sky that had turned steely gray, threatening rain that would complicate shooting conditions even further. Madison moved to her assigned station, methodically setting up her equipment with the focus that had defined her throughout training. Around her, the other candidates, prepared with varying degrees of confidence after the stress test, had separated the truly skilled from those merely adequate. General Harrington stood with Major Blackwell at the observation platform, their conversation animated but private. Madison caught the general glancing her way several times, his expression growing increasingly determined. She recognized that look from commanding officers throughout her career, the moment they decided a woman under their command needed to be put in her place. Candidates will commence firing in sequence, beginning with Station 1 at 600 meters, Captain Reynolds announced. Standard scoring protocol applies. Madison was assigned to fire third in the rotation. The first candidate, Lieutenant Parker, delivered a respectable performance, placing all 5 shots within the target rings, though not consistently in the bullseye. Staff Sergeant Miller followed with exceptional shooting, landing 4 of 5 shots in the center ring. When Madison's turn came, she approached the firing line with the same methodical calm that had defined her Olympic career. "Candidate Wright, you may commence firing when ready," Reynolds stated formally. Madison settled into position, establishing her natural point of aim and running through her mental checklist. Wind from the northwest at approximately 4 miles per hour. Temperature 62 degrees. Humidity rising with the approaching storm. Elevation adjustment confirmed. She controlled her breathing, allowed the crosshairs to settle precisely on target, and squeezed the trigger with smooth, consistent pressure. The Barrett's report cracked across the range. Through her scope, Madison confirmed a perfect center hit. Without pausing for self-congratulation, she recycled the bolt, reacquired the target, and prepared for her second shot. By the time she had fired her 5th round, even the most skeptical observers could see she had placed all 5 shots in a grouping so tight that from a distance, it appeared to be a single hole. 5 hits, all center mass, maximum points, the range officer confirmed loud enough for all to hear. As Madison moved to the 800-meter station, she noticed General Harrington conferring urgently with one of the range officers. Something about their body language triggered her instincts, a sense that rules were being altered. She maintained her focus on the task at hand, knowing that exceptional performance was her only defense against the institutional barriers she faced. The pattern continued through the 800 and 1,000-meter stations. Madison delivered near perfect shooting while the general's displeasure became increasingly evident. By the time she prepared for the 1,200-meter station, a distance that separated elite snipers from merely excellent marksmen, the atmosphere on the range had become charged with tension. General Harrington requests all candidates report for equipment inspection before continuing to extended range qualification, Major Blackwell announced suddenly, interrupting the established protocol. The unusual request raised eyebrows among the more experienced instructors. Equipment inspections were normally conducted before qualification began, not midway through the course. Madison carefully secured her rifle and stood at attention as the general himself approached her station. "Candidate Wright, surrender your weapon for inspection," Harrington ordered, his tone leaving no room for question. Madison presented the Barrett as required, maintaining perfect military bearing. "Sir, yes, sir." The general took the rifle, examining it with exaggerated scrutiny. "Major Blackwell, check this weapon for unauthorized modifications." Blackwell stepped forward, making a show of inspecting every component of the rifle. After several minutes of theatrical examination, he looked up with poorly concealed satisfaction. "Sir, the trigger pull appears to be lighter than regulation specifications." The accusation hung in the air. Modifying a trigger to require less pressure could potentially provide an advantage in precision shooting, though Madison's skill level was such that any such advantage would be minimal at best. More importantly, she knew with absolute certainty that her weapon was within regulations. She had personally verified its compliance before every training session. That would constitute a disqualifying violation of qualification standards. Harrington stated, loud enough for all present to hear. Captain Reynolds approached with visible concern. "Sir, all weapons were inspected this morning before qualifications began. Candidate Wright's rifle passed standard inspection." Are you suggesting Major Blackwell's assessment is incorrect, Captain? Harrington's voice carried a dangerous edge. Reynolds hesitated, clearly caught between professional integrity and career preservation. No, sir. Requesting permission to verify with measurement tools, sir. Denied. Major Blackwell's determination is sufficient, the general declared. He turned to Madison, barely concealing his satisfaction. Candidate Wright, you are disqualified from further participation in today's qualification due to equipment violations. Madison felt a cold fury building inside her, but maintained her disciplined exterior. Sir, request permission to demonstrate the trigger pull meets regulation standards using the range's calibration equipment. Request denied, Harrington. Snapped. Surrender your ammunition and report to administration for processing out of the program. Around them, the other candidates and instructors watched with varying expressions, some with discomfort at the obvious injustice, others with the satisfaction of seeing their biases confirmed. Staff Sergeant Miller stepped forward unexpectedly. Sir, with respect, I'd like to officially note that all candidates' equipment should be subject to the same mid-qualification inspection for consistency of standards. Harrington's cold glare shifted to Miller. Your concern is noted, Sergeant. Now return to your station unless you wish to join candidate Wright in disqualification. It was a critical moment, the point where institutional power was being explicitly misused, where the choice between career preservation and integrity became unavoidable. Madison had encountered similar moments throughout her career. Instances where remaining silent meant personal advancement, but at the cost of reinforcing discriminatory systems. She had always chosen career preservation before, believing she could change things from within once she attained sufficient rank and influence. But something about this moment was different. Perhaps it was seeing Staff Sergeant Miller risk his own career to speak up. Perhaps it was the cumulative weight of 1,000 small injustices finally becoming too heavy to bear. Or perhaps it was simply the recognition that if she allowed this to happen, she would be betraying not just herself but every woman who would come after her. Sir, Madison said, her voice carrying clearly across the now silent range. I respectfully refuse to surrender my weapon on the grounds that this inspection violates established qualification protocols and appears to be selectively enforced. The general's face darkened with anger. That was not a request, candidate. Right, it was a direct order. An order that contradicts military regulations regarding fair assessment standards. Sir, Madison replied, maintaining perfect military bearing despite the growing tension. As such, I am obligated by the Uniform Code of Military Justice to respectfully decline. You're refusing a direct order? Harrington's voice was dangerously quiet. I'm requesting adherence to established protocols, sir. The same protocols. That would apply to any candidate, regardless of gender. The general stepped closer, using his significant height advantage in an attempt to intimidate. Madison met his gaze without flinching. Sir, I request Captain Reynolds conduct a proper measurement of the trigger pull using calibrated equipment, with witnesses present. The standoff lasted 5 heartbeats before Harrington made his critical mistake. With a sudden movement born of frustration and authority, unchecked by accountability, he reached for Madison's rifle, attempting to physically wrest it from her grasp. General, with respect, Madison began, but was cut short as Harrington yanked the Barrett with enough force to potentially damage the precision weapon. What happened next occurred in a fluid sequence that would later be described differently by various witnesses. As the general pulled the rifle with excessive force, Madison instinctively protected the weapon while simultaneously shifting her body to maintain balance. Harrington, not expecting resistance from someone he perceived as physically inferior, overbalanced. When he reached out to grab Madison's arm, her training took over. The defensive maneuver was textbook, a simple joint manipulation taught in basic combat training to all military personnel. Madison executed it with precision, creating distance between herself and the aggressor while establishing control. The unfortunate result was an audible snap as the general's arm bent in. Direction nature never intended. Harrington's shout of pain and rage echoed across the range as he staggered backward, clutching his clearly broken arm. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved, the scene frozen in collective shock. Then chaos erupted. "Restrain her!" Major Blackwell shouted, rushing to the general's side. 2 range officers moved toward Madison, their expressions conflicted, but their training compelling obedience to the chain of command. Captain Reynolds intervened, his voice cutting through the confusion. "Stand down! Nobody touches any candidate without my direct order." His unexpected assertion of authority created a momentary pause in the unfolding disaster. Madison remained at perfect attention, the Barrett held securely in proper carrying position. "Sir, I respectfully request a formal review of this incident and completion of qualification under objective supervision." Before anyone could respond, Staff Sergeant Miller stepped forward again. "Sir, request permission to surrender my weapon for inspection as well, as should be standard procedure if equipment concerns exist." His deliberate solidarity shifted the dynamic further. One by one, the remaining candidates followed suit, forming a unified front that transformed an isolated incident into a systemic challenge. The general, still clutching his injured arm, fixed Madison with a look of pure hatred. "You've just ended your military career, right?" he snarled through clenched teeth. "Perhaps, sir," she responded, her composure unbroken. "But not for the reasons you believe." Within an hour, the Highland Peak training facility had transformed into a surreal battleground of institutional politics. The general had been evacuated to medical facilities where his broken arm was confirmed, while Madison found herself confined to administrative quarters, awaiting what would certainly be severe disciplinary action. Captain Reynolds, demonstrating unexpected moral courage, had insisted on following proper protocols. He had measured Madison's rifle trigger and confirmed it was within regulation specifications, then ordered the qualification to continue for the remaining candidates, while requesting external review of the incident. Madison sat alone in the sparse administrative detention room, contemplating the likely end of her military career. Breaking a general's arm, regardless of provocation or justification, was not something the system would forgive easily. Yet beneath the rational understanding of consequences, she felt a strange sense of peace. For perhaps the first time in her career, she had refused to accept institutional injustice, had stood her ground when integrity demanded it. The door opened without warning, admitting Colonel Patricia Hernandez, the highest-ranking woman at Highland Peak and deputy commandant. For training oversight, Madison immediately stood at attention. "At ease, Wright," Hernandez said, closing the door behind her. "This is an informal conversation." Madison relaxed marginally, studying the colonel's unreadable expression. Hernandez was a legendary figure in military circles, a combat-decorated officer who had shattered numerous barriers throughout her 30-year career. Her presence suggested the situation had escalated far beyond a simple qualification dispute. "You've created quite the situation," Hernandez said, taking a seat at the small table and gesturing for Madison to do the same. "Breaking a general's arm is not typically recommended for career advancement." "No, ma'am," Madison acknowledged, sitting rigidly across from the colonel. However, Hernandez continued, her tone shifting slightly, "attempting to physically confiscate a candidate's weapon during qualification without proper procedure is equally unprecedented." She studied Madison carefully. "Tell me your version of events, candidate, off the record." Madison provided a precise, factual account of the morning's events. From the altered qualification sequence to the final confrontation, she neither embellished nor diminished her own actions, presenting the situation with the objective clarity of a mission report. When she finished, Hernandez was silent for several moments, her expression thoughtful. "Did you know there's a security camera on the qualification range?" she finally asked. Madison's heart stuttered. "No, ma'am." "Installed last year after allegations of scoring irregularities. The footage corroborates your account entirely," Hernandez revealed. "It also reveals a pattern of selective enforcement. That would be problematic if reviewed by Pentagon oversight committees." The implication was clear. Evidence existed that could damage Harrington's career far more than a broken arm. "What happens now, ma'am?" Madison asked, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the glimmer of hope. Hernandez leaned forward. "Slightly. That depends largely on what you want, right? You have options, though none are without consequence." "Options, ma'am?" "Option 1. Disciplinary action proceeds. You're discharged, likely with less than honorable conditions. Harrington salvages his reputation, and the system continues unchanged." Hernandez's directness was refreshing after months of institutional doublespeak. "Option 2. You accept a transfer to another training program. All charges are dropped, and everyone pretends this never happened." Madison processed these possibilities, recognizing the familiar pattern of institutional self-preservation. "And option 3, ma'am?" A hint of approval flickered across Hernandez's face. "Option 3 is more complicated. You complete your qualification today, under my direct supervision. All candidates receive fair and equal assessment. The security footage remains secure, but available if needed for future review. And General Harrington, ma'am, will be on medical leave, then reassigned pending review of training protocols." Hernandez's expression hardened. "This isn't the first incident, right? Just the first with irrefutable evidence and a candidate unwilling to be silenced." Madison considered the implications carefully. "Option 3 would require extraordinary approval, ma'am." "Already secured," Hernandez replied. "The Pentagon has certain diversity initiatives that receive priority attention. Breaking barriers makes for excellent press releases, especially when backed by exceptional qualification scores." The cynical political calculation was clear, yet it aligned with justice in this particular case. Madison recognized the rare opportunity being presented, not just for her career, but for institutional change. "I would like to complete my qualification, ma'am," she said firmly. Hernandez nodded once, decisively. "Then let's proceed. The remaining candidates are waiting. You have 25 targets to engage, Madison. Make every shot count." 2 hours later, Madison Wright stood on the 1,500-meter firing line, the most challenging distance in the qualification course. The sky had cleared, but tricky wind conditions made the extended range shots exceptionally difficult. Colonel Hernandez personally oversaw the qualification, her presence ensuring absolute adherence to protocols. Madison had already completed the 1,200-meter stage with perfect scores, matching Staff Sergeant Miller's exceptional performance. Now only the final stage remained, 5 shots at a distance few snipers could master, in conditions that challenged even the most experienced marksmen. "Candidate Wright, you may commence firing when ready," Colonel Hernandez announced formally. Madison settled into position, establishing perfect alignment with her target. At this extreme distance, every variable became magnified: the Earth's rotation, atmospheric conditions, even her heartbeat could affect shot placement. She controlled her breathing with the same techniques she'd used in Olympic competition, allowing her awareness to expand to encompass every environmental factor. Her first shot broke the silence of the range, the Barrett's powerful report echoing across the mountains. Through her scope, Madison confirmed a perfect center hit at 1,500 meters, a shot that would be exceptional for even the most experienced military snipers. Without celebrating or breaking concentration, by her 5th shot, Madison had placed all rounds in a grouping tighter than most qualified snipers could achieve at half the distance. 5 confirmed hits, center mass, the range officer announced. Perfect score at all distances. Colonel. Hernandez approached as Madison secured her weapon. 25 targets, 25 perfect hits. A qualification record, right? The remaining candidates and instructors maintained professional composure, but their expressions revealed a fundamental shift in perception. What had begun as skepticism had transformed into reluctant respect, then genuine appreciation of exceptional skill regardless of gender. Staff Sergeant Miller approached, extending his hand with genuine respect. That was the finest shooting I've ever witnessed, he said simply. Likewise, Sergeant, Madison replied, acknowledging his own exceptional performance with professional courtesy. Captain Reynolds completed the scoring tabulation, presenting the final results to Colonel Hernandez. Ma'am, Candidate Wright has achieved the highest qualification score in Highland Peak history. Staff Sergeant Miller places second with exceptional scores as well. Hernandez reviewed the paperwork with appropriate seriousness before addressing the assembled group. Congratulations to all qualifying candidates. You represent the highest standards of military excellence. Special recognition to Candidate Wright and Staff Sergeant Miller for exceptional performance under challenging conditions. As the formal proceedings concluded, Hernandez approached Madison privately. The Delta Force Selection Board will receive your qualification results directly, she said quietly. Your performance today has opened doors that were previously closed, right? Not just for you. Madison understood the broader implications. Her stand against discrimination, backed by irrefutable excellence, would make it harder for the system to exclude qualified women from elite positions in the future. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me, Hernandez replied with unexpected candor. I've been fighting this battle for 30 years, often by compromising more than I should have. Today you demonstrated a better approach, excellence combined with moral courage. As Madison packed her equipment, preparing to leave Highland Peak behind, she reflected on the day's events and their likely consequences. Breaking a general's arm would follow her throughout her career, but so would her qualification scores and the precedent she had established. Some doors would close, but others, perhaps more important ones, would open. Staff Sergeant Miller approached as she loaded her gear into her vehicle. Right, he called, his expression serious. What happened today, it matters. Not just for you. Madison nodded, understanding the larger significance. For everyone who deserves fair assessment, regardless of who they are. The system only changes when people with privilege recognize injustice and people without it refuse to accept it, Miller said quietly. I wish I'd spoken up sooner. You spoke when it mattered, Madison replied, extending her hand. That's what counts. As she drove away from Highland Peak, Madison's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Delta Force Qualification Board. Tuesday 08:00. Bring your Barrett. Colonel Hernandez, Madison smiled slightly, feeling a sense of validation that transcended personal achievement. Today's stand wasn't just about her career. It was about changing a system that had excluded qualified people based on preconceptions rather than performance. The broken arm was regrettable, but sometimes transformation required breaking things that refused to bend. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle secured in its case beside her represented more than a weapon. It symbolized excellence that couldn't be denied and courage that refused to compromise. 25 perfect shots had spoken louder than decades of institutional resistance, proving once again that actions ultimately matter more than prejudice. Sometimes the most powerful victory isn't just succeeding within a broken system, but forcing that system to recognize its flaws and begin the process of meaningful change. The Pentagon's Delta Force Qualification Facility looked nothing like the imposing military structures depicted in films. Situated in an unmarked compound with deliberately nondescript architecture, its unremarkable exterior concealed one of the most sophisticated tactical training centers in the world. Madison arrived 15 minutes early, navigating the multiple security checkpoints with the quiet confidence that had become her trademark. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 4 days had passed since the Highland Peak incident days, filled with debriefings, medical evaluations, and psychological assessments designed to determine if she possessed the temperament for special operations. The broken arm incident had followed her as expected, but Colonel Hernandez's influence had reframed the narrative, not as an act of insubordination, but as a demonstration of tactical decision-making under pressure. Candidate Wright, A. Voice called as Madison cleared the final security checkpoint. Commander Jackson Taylor, the legendary former SEAL who now oversaw Delta Force selection, approached with purposeful strides. His weathered face revealed nothing as he extended his hand. Your reputation precedes you. Madison met his firm handshake with equal pressure. Thank you for the opportunity, sir. Let's be clear, Taylor said without preamble as they walked toward the briefing room. Breaking a general's arm isn't standard procedure for advancement in special operations. No, sir, Madison acknowledged. Taylor's expression remained neutral, but something resembling amusement flickered in his eyes. However, 25 perfect shots at extreme distances under duress, that gets our attention regardless of circumstances. He studied her with a calculating assessment of someone who had evaluated thousands of operators. The question isn't whether you can shoot right. It's whether you can integrate into the most elite unit in the military, where team cohesion determines survival. The implication was clear. Her gender presented potential complications in a unit that had never included women in combat roles. Madison had prepared for this exact conversation. With respect, sir, integration is a two-way responsibility, she replied. My focus remains on performance standards, not making history. Taylor nodded almost imperceptibly, apparently satisfied with her response. Today's qualification will test more than marksmanship, he said as they reached the briefing room door. It will assess your tactical decision-making, field craft, communication under pressure, and ability to adapt to changing mission parameters. Understood, sir. One more thing, Wright, Taylor added, his tone shifting slightly. The men waiting inside that room are among the finest operators in the world. They've conducted missions you'll never read about in environments you can't imagine. Their initial skepticism isn't personal, it's based on decades of operational experience. Madison maintained her professional demeanor. I expect to be judged by my performance, sir, nothing more or less. Taylor's expression softened fractionally. That's the right answer. Now let's see if your actions match your words. The briefing room contained 7 men in unmarked tactical uniforms, the Delta Force assessment team. Their expressions ranged from open curiosity to barely concealed skepticism as Madison entered. Unlike Highland Peak, there were no overt signs of hostility, just the reserved judgment of elite operators who had seen promising candidates fail countless times before. Master Sergeant Nathan Reeves, the lead tactical assessor, began without preliminaries. Today's qualification consists of 4 phases, he announced, bringing up a digital display of the course layout. Dynamic marksmanship, urban environment navigation, hostage scenario decision-making, and extended range precision under environmental stress. Madison absorbed the information with focused attention as Reeves detailed each phase. The qualification was deliberately designed to be more demanding than any standard military assessment, with failure rates exceeding 90% even among highly qualified candidates. Questions? Reeves concluded, looking directly at Madison. No, sir. Clear on objectives. And parameters? Reeves nodded once. Gear up. Assessment begins in 15 minutes. As Madison prepared her equipment, she noticed one of the assessors approaching, Staff Sergeant David Chun, whose reputation as Delta's premier sniper instructor was legendary among marksmen. "That's the Barrett M107A1, Chun commented, gesturing toward her rifle case. "How long have you worked with that platform?" 3 years, sir," Madison replied, continuing her methodical preparation. "Approximately 1,500 hours of operational training." Chun's expression revealed professional interest rather than skepticism. "The M107 has substantial recoil characteristics that many shooters find challenging to manage for extended operations." Madison recognized the unasked question. "I've developed specific muscle conditioning and positioning techniques to compensate for those characteristics, sir." She continued her equipment check without elaboration, letting her forthcoming performance answer any remaining questions. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The dynamic marksmanship phase began on a multi-level shooting complex designed to simulate combat environments. Unlike traditional qualification courses with stationary firing positions, this required engaging targets while moving through structures, maintaining situational awareness, and making split-second shoot, no-shoot decisions. Candidate Wright, you'll proceed through the course, engaging designated targets according to mission parameters, Reeves explained. Civilian non-combatants are present throughout the scenario. Identification and trigger discipline are critical. Madison absorbed the instructions while mentally mapping the visible portions of the course. This would test more than accuracy. It would assess her ability to maintain precision while navigating complex environments under time pressure. Your mission is to neutralize all hostile targets while extracting a high-value intelligence asset, Reeves continued. Mission success requires both speed and accuracy. Begin when ready. Madison moved through the entry point with fluid efficiency, her Barrett positioned for immediate engagement while maintaining maximum mobility in the confined space. The first scenario unfolded in what appeared to be a simulated office building, with pop-up targets representing both hostiles and civilians. The distinction wasn't always obvious. Some hostile targets appeared in civilian clothing, while others emerged from unexpected positions requiring instant threat assessment. Madison moved methodically but quickly, her trigger discipline evident as she engaged only confirmed threats while maintaining constant awareness of her surroundings. "Target transition speed is exceptional," she heard Chun comment through her communications earpiece. Maintaining precision while moving. The course increased in complexity as Madison progressed, introducing low-light conditions, distraction elements, and targets requiring engagement through intermediate barriers. Throughout the challenge, she demonstrated the fluid movement and instinctive accuracy that separated elite operators from conventional forces. When she reached the extraction point with the simulated intelligence asset, the assessment team's expressions had shifted from professional skepticism to genuine interest. Madison had completed the course in 4:23, nearly 30 seconds faster than the qualification standard, with 100% target discrimination accuracy. "Phase 1 complete," Reeves announced, making notations on his tablet. "Proceed to urban navigation." Assessment. The second phase tested Madison's ability to move through hostile urban terrain while maintaining stealth and completing complex mission objectives. Unlike the shooting course, this assessment prioritized invisibility over speed, requiring candidates to navigate through a simulated urban environment with multiple security systems without detection. "Your mission is infiltration and intelligence gathering," Reeves explained. "You must photograph 3 specific documents located in separate secured locations, then exfiltrate without alerting security systems or engaging security personnel." This phase played to Madison's strengths. Her Olympic biathlon background had developed exceptional breath and movement control, skills that translated perfectly to stealth operations. Moving through the mock city blocks with ghost-like efficiency, she bypassed security cameras, avoided pressure sensors, and navigated past simulated patrols without detection. Impressive movement discipline, one assessor commented as Madison successfully photographed the second target document without triggering any alerts. Breath control during precision manipulation is exceptional. The most challenging segment came during exfiltration, when Madison encountered an unexpected security patrol directly in her exit path. Rather than retreat or engage, she improvised an environmental distraction using nearby materials, creating sufficient misdirection to slip past undetected. Candidate has successfully completed Phase 2 with 0 security alerts, announced the monitoring technician as Madison reached the extraction point. All intelligence objectives achieved. The assessment team's body language had shifted noticeably. The reserved professional assessment remained, but the underlying skepticism had been replaced by growing recognition of exceptional capability, regardless of gender. Prepare for Phase 3, Commander Taylor instructed. Hostage scenario decision. Assessment. The third phase moved beyond physical performance into the realm of tactical judgment, often the most challenging aspect for candidates with conventional military backgrounds. Madison was briefed on a complex hostage situation requiring multiple decision points with incomplete intelligence and shifting parameters. You'll be presented with a series of tactical scenarios requiring immediate decisions based on limited information, Taylor explained. Your responses will be evaluated for decisiveness, judgment, and adherence to mission priorities. The simulation began with high-definition video feeds showing a hostage situation in a foreign embassy. Madison was required to make rapid deployment decisions, determine engagement protocols, and prioritize objectives while receiving constantly updating intelligence. Hostiles have separated the primary intelligence asset from other hostages, the scenario controller announced. New intelligence indicates possible suicide vests on 2 unidentified subjects. Satellite communication will be lost in 30 seconds. Provide immediate tactical directive. Madison processed the information with remarkable clarity, issuing precise instructions that prioritized intelligence asset extraction while minimizing civilian casualties. Throughout the scenario, she demonstrated the rational decision-making under extreme pressure that defined elite operators. Candidate shows exceptional threat prioritization, noted psychological assessor Dr. Lawson. Decision tree remains clear despite emotional pressure elements. When the scenario concluded, Madison had navigated 12 critical decision points with only 1 suboptimal choice, a remarkable performance for any candidate, particularly one without previous special operations experience. Phase 3 complete, Taylor announced. Final assessment phase begins in 30 minutes. Hydrate and prepare accordingly. As Madison replenished fluids and checked her equipment, she noticed Master Sergeant Reeves and Staff Sergeant Chun in close conversation, occasionally glancing her way. Their expression suggested not criticism but recalibration, the adjustment of expectations based on demonstrated performance rather than preconception. Chun approached as Madison prepared her Barrett for the final phase. "Your trigger control is exceptional," he said without preamble. "Most shooters telegraph their shot with micro-tensions before breaking. You maintain perfect consistency throughout." The squeeze. "Olympic biathlon training," Madison explained, continuing her methodical preparation. "Breathing synchronized with heartbeat regulation becomes instinctive after enough repetition." Chun nodded with professional appreciation. "The final phase will test that skill set extensively. Environmental factors will be significant. The fourth phase, extreme distance precision under environmental stress, would be the ultimate test of Madison's specialized capabilities." The assessment took place on Delta's classified long-range facility, featuring distances beyond what conventional military training ever addressed. Candidate Wright. This assessment consists of engaging targets at progressively extended ranges. Under variable environmental conditions, Commander Taylor explained as they reached the firing position. Beginning at 1,000 meters and extending to 2,300 meters, with wind conditions artificially enhanced to create maximum challenge, Madison surveyed the range with professional assessment. Giant industrial fans had been positioned to create unpredictable wind patterns that would make extreme distance shooting exponentially more difficult. This wasn't just a test of accuracy. The pattern continued through the 1,500-meter stage, Madison compensating for increasing wind variables with precise adjustments to maintain perfect accuracy. At 1,800 meters, a distance few military snipers ever engaged targets effectively, she delivered 4 perfect center mass hits and 1 shot slightly off-center, but still within the target zone. Candidate maintaining exceptional accuracy at extended range. Chun commented, no longer bothering to hide his professional admiration. Wind calculation is intuitive rather than formulaic. The final distance, 2,300 meters, nearly a mile and a half, represented the outer limits of the Barrett's effective range, even under ideal conditions. With the artificial wind variables, hitting targets consistently at this distance wasn't just difficult. It approached the theoretical limits of ballistic physics. Madison approached this final challenge with the same methodical preparation that had defined her entire career. She calculated wind vectors, atmospheric density, temperature variables, and bullet drop with mathematical precision, then incorporated the intuitive adjustments that separated truly exceptional shooters from those who merely followed formulas. Her first shot at maximum distance broke through the howling artificial wind, traveling the extreme distance in just over 2 seconds before striking the target dead center. A shot so improbable under the conditions that several assessment team members exchanged glances of disbelief. Target hit, center mass, the range officer confirmed through the communication system. Madison maintained her focus, adjusting for a subtle shift in wind conditions before firing her second shot. Another confirmed hit, slightly off-center, but well within effective range. The third shot encountered a sudden crosswind gust at mid-trajectory, pushing it to the outer edge of the target. Still technically a hit, but not the precision Madison demanded of herself. She noted the exact wind behavior, calculating a more aggressive compensation for her fourth attempt. The fourth shot missed by centimeters, her first miss of the entire qualification. Madison absorbed this information without visible reaction. Recalculating her approach for the final shot of the assessment, everything hinged on this final round. 4 hits at maximum range would tie Staff Sergeant Chin's standing record, a remarkable achievement for any qualification candidate, but particularly significant given the institutional barriers Madison had overcome to reach this point. She settled into her final firing position, taking slightly longer to assess the wind patterns before squeezing the trigger with perfect mechanical precision. The Barrett's report echoed across the range as the final round began its long journey toward the nearly invisible target. For a moment, silence dominated the range as spotters tracked the shot through high-powered optics. Then the confirmation came through. Target hit, center mass. Candidate has achieved 4 confirmed hits at maximum distance, equaling current facility record. Madison secured her weapon with the same calm efficiency she'd maintained throughout the assessment, betraying no celebration despite the historic achievement. Around her, the assessment team's expressions reflected the transformation that excellence inevitably demands, the abandonment of preconception in the face of undeniable performance. Commander Taylor approached as Madison packed her equipment. "Candidate Wright," he said formally, "the assessment team will now evaluate your overall qualification performance. Please report to the debriefing room in 30 minutes. As Madison moved toward the facility, Staff Sergeant Chin fell into Step beside her. 4 at max distance on your first attempt, he said, professional respect evident in his tone. Took me 6 qualification runs to achieve that benchmark. Different conditions each time, Madison replied, acknowledging the variables that made direct comparisons difficult. Chun shook his head slightly. The record will show tied performance, he said quietly, but everyone present knows what we witnessed today. The debriefing room held an atmosphere of subdued anticipation when Madison entered exactly 30 minutes later. The entire assessment team was present, along with Commander Taylor and an unexpected addition, Colonel Hernandez, who nodded almost imperceptibly in acknowledgement. Candidate Wright, Taylor began without preamble, your performance today has been evaluated against the established standards for Delta Force qualification. He consulted the digital tablet before him. You have achieved qualifying scores in all assessment phases, with exceptional performance noted in extreme distance marksmanship and urban infiltration segments. Madison maintained her professional composure despite the historic significance of the moment. She wasn't just passing qualification, she was demolishing preconceptions that had limited opportunities for qualified operators based on gender rather than capability. Standard protocol requires team assessment of integration potential, Taylor continued. Master Sergeant Reeves will deliver the team's evaluation. Reeves stepped forward, his weathered face revealing nothing of his assessment. Candidate Wright has demonstrated tactical decision-making, stealth capability, and marksmanship skills consistent with Delta Force operational requirements, he stated formally. The assessment team's evaluation indicates high probability of successful integration based on demonstrated performance metrics. The clinical language couldn't disguise the significance. This wasn't merely a qualification, it was the dismantling of the final barrier, preventing women from serving in America's most elite Special Operations Unit. Based on qualification performance and team assessment, Taylor announced, Candidate Wright has met all standards for Delta Force selection. Final approval rests with Joint Special Operations Command. He paused, then added with the hint of a smile, Given today's performance, I anticipate that approval will be expedited. The formal proceedings concluded and the assessment team dispersed, several members nodding respectfully to Madison as they departed. Colonel Hernandez remained behind, approaching once the room had cleared. Well done, Wright, she said simply. 25 targets at Highland Peak was impressive. 4 at maximum range under artificial wind conditions that makes history in more ways than one. Madison finally allowed herself a small smile. Thank you for the opportunity, Colonel. I didn't give you anything, Hernandez replied with characteristic directness. You earned this through performance that couldn't be denied, even by those determined to maintain the status quo. As they walked toward the facility exit, Hernandez continued with unexpected candor. What happened at Highland Peak, breaking Harrington's arm, could have ended your career. Instead, it became the catalyst for institutional change. Sometimes systems only change when the cost of maintaining them becomes too high, Madison observed. Hernandez nodded thoughtfully. That's unusually philosophical for a sniper. Long hours behind the scope provide ample time for reflection, ma'am. As they reached the security checkpoint, Hernandez paused. The path forward won't be easy, right? Being first never is. Some will resent your presence. Others will scrutinize every action looking for failure. And many will claim you received special treatment despite evidence to the contrary. With respect, Colonel, Madison replied. That describes my entire military career to date. Hernandez laughed unexpectedly. Fair point. But remember something important. Your performance today didn't just open doors for yourself. It created possibilities for every qualified woman who follows. As Madison drove away from the facility, her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Qualification results received by JSOC. Approval granted. Report for Delta Force Integration Briefing, Monday 0700. Congratulations, Operator Wright. Commander Taylor. The significance wasn't lost on Madison. Not Candidate Wright, but Operator Wright, the formal acknowledgement of her new status among America's most elite special operations personnel. Years of dedication, thousands of hours of practice, and the courage to stand against institutional barriers had culminated in this moment of transformation. The broken arm incident would remain part of her story, but it would be overshadowed by what followed: 25 perfect shots at Highland Peak and 4 confirmed hits at maximum distance under impossible conditions. Excellence had spoken, a language that transcended prejudice, proving once again that capability ultimately matters more than category. As sunset painted the sky in brilliant hues, Madison thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment, from Olympic competition to military service, through countless instances of doubt and dismissal, to the historic achievement of becoming the first woman qualified for Delta Force operations. The path had never been smooth, but its challenges had forged the strength and determination necessary to make history. Sometimes transformation requires breaking more than arms. It requires breaking barriers, shattering expectations, and dismantling systems that limit human potential based on preconception rather than performance. Madison had done precisely that, not through protest or politics, but through the Barrett .50 caliber rifle that had become the instrument of that change rested in its case beside her, a reminder that tools are only as effective as the hands that wield them and the mind that guides them. 29 perfect shots across 2 historic qualifications had spoken a truth that no amount of institutional resistance could silence. Excellence knows no gender. 6 months into her historic role as the first female operator in Delta Force, Madison Wright sat alone in a dimly lit briefing room at an undisclosed forward operating base, studying mission parameters that would test even the elite unit's exceptional capabilities. Operation Shadowfall represented her first deployment as primary sniper overwatch, a position of immense responsibility in a mission with zero margin for error. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The intelligence photos spread before her revealed a fortified compound in mountainous terrain, where a high-value intelligence asset was being held by an emerging terrorist faction. Satellite imagery showed multiple guard positions, unpredictable patrol patterns, and challenging extraction routes through territory controlled by hostile forces. Adding to the complexity, recent atmospheric conditions created unstable weather patterns in the region, potentially affecting shooting conditions during the crucial extraction phase. Final briefing in 10 minutes, announced Captain Marcus Reed, Delta's Alpha Team commander and Madison's direct superior for this operation. Reed had been among the first to accept Madison based solely on her qualifications, creating a professional environment where gender became irrelevant in the face of proven capability. Weather update just came through, he added, sliding a tablet across the table. High-altitude wind conditions are deteriorating faster than expected. May need to adjust insertion timing. Madison studied the meteorological data with focused intensity. Wind variables at sniper positions would significantly impact long-distance shot viability during the critical extraction window. These gusts will push 25 knots by 0300, she observed. Recommend we move insertion up by 90 minutes to ensure stable shooting platform establishment before conditions deteriorate. Reed considered this assessment without hesitation. Madison had proven her tactical judgment repeatedly during training operations, earning the pragmatic respect that elite units reserve for demonstrated competence rather than rank or background. Agreed, he decided after reviewing the data. I'll update the insertion schedule. Your primary position remains Overlook Alpha, with contingency at Bravo if terrain features don't match satellite imaging. Madison nodded, mentally calculating shooting angles from both proposed positions. Overlook Alpha offered superior lines of sight to the target building, but exposed the shooter to potentially stronger wind effects. Bravo provided better protection, but limited visibility to certain extraction corridors. Both would require exceptional marksmanship under challenging conditions. The briefing room door opened, admitting the remaining 6 members of Alpha Team. Their expressions reflected the focused intensity of operators preparing for high-risk deployment, their movements carrying the quiet efficiency of those accustomed to functioning in life-or-death environments. What had changed over 6 months wasn't just Madison's acceptance into the unit, but the natural evolution from novelty to normalcy. The initial curiosity about the female operator had been replaced by straightforward professional assessment of a teammate's capabilities. In the meritocracy of elite operations, performance had rendered gender irrelevant. "Gather up, people," Reed called, activating the digital display that dominated the far wall. Mission parameters have been updated based on latest intelligence and environmental factors. The team settled into position with the disciplined attention characteristic of Delta operators. Master Sergeant Eric Kovac, the team's veteran explosives specialist, acknowledged Madison with a slight nod as he took his seat. Their working relationship had evolved from his initial skepticism to genuine respect after she had demonstrated exceptional shooting during an ambush in training that saved Kovac from a simulated hostile force. Operation Shadowfall's window has been adjusted forward by 90 minutes due to deteriorating weather conditions, Reed announced, bringing up the revised timeline. Insertion now scheduled for 0130 hours, with primary exfiltration 0330. Wright's assessment of high-altitude wind patterns indicates we need to complete extraction before 0400 to maintain optimal overwatch conditions. Staff Sergeant James Wilson, the communication specialist, glanced toward Madison with professional appreciation rather than doubt. 6 months earlier, he might have questioned a schedule change based on her assessment. Now he simply incorporated the new information into his planning without comment, the ultimate form of respect in an environment where trust equaled survival. Primary insertion remains hollow drop at designated coordinates, Reed continued, highlighting the parachute landing zone on the tactical display. Team proceeds to target location maintaining communication blackout protocols. Wright establishes overwatch position at Overlook Alpha while assault element moves to breach positions. The briefing continued with precise detail, each team member absorbing their specific responsibilities within the complex operation. When Reed concluded, he opened the floor for questions and observations. The Delta Force tradition of encouraging input regardless of rank or seniority. Wind forecast shows possible directional shifts between 0300 and 0400, Madison noted, addressing both Reed and the team. Recommend communication protocol to confirm sustained overwatch capability if conditions change rapidly. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Lieutenant Carlos Ramirez, the team's medical specialist and extraction coordinator, nodded in agreement. Good call. We should establish specific go, no-go parameters based on overwatch confirmation before committing to the breach. 6 months earlier, such a recommendation from Madison might have faced resistance or dismissal. Now, it was evaluated solely on its tactical merit, evidence of the transformative power of demonstrated excellence over time. Agreed, Reed decided. Wright will confirm overwatch viability using coded transmission before we initiate breach. If conditions exceed predetermined parameters, we abort and move to contingency extraction plan. He surveyed the team with the measured assessment of an experienced commander. Any other considerations? Finding none, he concluded with the simple directness that defined Delta operations. Wheels up in 4 hours. Gear check in 2, dismissed. As the team dispersed to complete final preparations, Madison remained briefly to study the terrain maps one last time. The compound's location presented significant challenges for establishing stable shooting positions, particularly with the updated weather forecast suggesting gusting wind conditions at higher elevations. "Right," called a familiar voice from the doorway. Madison looked up to find Staff Sergeant David Chun, the legendary Delta sniper who had assessed her qualification and whose record she had tied during selection. "Your first primary overwatch," Chun observed, entering the room and studying the tactical display. "Challenging conditions." Madison nodded in acknowledgement, appreciating that Chun's comment contained neither doubt nor encouragement, just professional recognition of operational realities. Their relationship had evolved into something resembling mentorship, though neither would have used that term. "Wind variables at alpha position will be significant," she noted, indicating the elevated shooting platform on the terrain model. Chun considered this assessment with the calculated precision of someone intimately familiar with the challenges of long-distance shooting under adverse conditions. "The ridge line creates unpredictable eddies when winds exceed 20 knots," he observed. "Valley positioning might offer more stable platform despite reduced visibility." This wasn't questioning her capability. It was the natural exchange between professionals with shared expertise. Chun had conducted similar overwatch operations in comparable terrain, and his observations carried the weight of hard-won experience. "I've calculated maximum effective engagement from 3 alternative positions," Madison replied, bringing up her contingency plans on the display, "including this depression that provides both wind protection and adequate lines of sight to the primary extraction corridor." Chun studied her analysis with professional appreciation. Good identification of natural wind barriers while maintaining target acquisition capability. The simple comment represented high praise from someone of Chun's experience. As Madison completed her preparations in the equipment room, methodically checking every component of her specialized gear, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From breaking a general's arm in defiance of institutional discrimination to preparing for high-risk deployment with America's most elite special operations unit, the path had been defined by excellence that refused to be denied. The Barrett M107A1 sniper rifle she carefully inspected had become more than a weapon. It represented the meritocracy that ultimately prevailed when performance spoke louder than preconception. Each perfectly placed shot had helped dismantle barriers that limited human potential based on category rather than capability. 10 minutes to transport, announced the operations coordinator over the facility's communication system. Madison completed her final equipment check with practiced efficiency, securing her rifle case and tactical gear for the helicopter transport that would take the team to the Halo insertion aircraft. As she moved toward the staging area, she encountered Colonel Hernandez, who had arrived to observe the mission deployment. "Operator Wright," Hernandez acknowledged with formal professionalism that concealed their shared history. "Alpha teams. Mission parameters look challenging." "Yes, ma'am," Madison replied, maintaining appropriate military bearing. "Weather variables add complexity to the extraction phase." Hernandez's expression revealed nothing to casual observers, but Madison recognized the subtle pride behind her professional demeanor. What had begun as an institutional challenge, the broken arm incident that could have ended Madison's career, had evolved into historic transformation through performance that couldn't be denied. "Your journey to this deployment has significance beyond this specific mission," Hernandez said quietly, ensuring their conversation remained private. 3 female candidates entered Highland Peak last month, all meeting preliminary qualification standards. The information carried profound meaning. Madison's success hadn't just opened doors for her individual career. It had begun dismantling institutional barriers that limited military specialties based on gender rather than qualification. The standards remain unchanged, Hernandez added with emphasis, as they should be. The only standard that matters is performance, Madison replied, echoing the principle that had guided her career. Hernandez nodded with approval. Precisely. Excellence speaks a language that ultimately transcends resistance. She stepped back, resuming her formal military bearing as other team members approached the staging area. Successful mission, Operator Wright. Alpha Team assembled at the transport helicopter with the disciplined efficiency characteristic of elite units. Their pre-mission communication was minimal. Each operator focused on mental preparation for the complex operation ahead, reviewing their specific responsibilities within the team framework. Captain Reed conducted final communication checks as the helicopter rotors accelerated to operational speed. All elements confirm mission readiness, he stated through the tactical communication system. Each team member responded with crisp confirmation, including Madison's Overwatch confirmed ready. The helicopter lifted off into the darkening sky, carrying Alpha Team toward the high-altitude aircraft that would facilitate their halo insertion into hostile territory. Madison used the transport time for mental preparation, visualizing shooting positions, wind compensation calculations, and potential contingencies with the focused concentration that had defined her career. What had changed most profoundly in 6 months wasn't just her acceptance into the unit, but how that acceptance had been achieved, not through policy mandates or diversity initiatives, but through performance so exceptional it forced institutional evolution. The same excellence that had placed 25 perfect shots at Highland Peak and 4 at maximum distance during qualification had continued throughout integration and training, creating a reality where capability rendered category irrelevant. The halo insertion proceeded with precision despite challenging high-altitude wind conditions. Madison's body remembered the thousands of training jumps as she navigated through darkness toward the designated landing zone, maintaining perfect positioning relative to her teammates throughout the controlled descent. Upon landing, Alpha Team moved with silent efficiency through hostile territory, navigating treacherous mountain terrain while avoiding enemy patrols. Madison separated from the main element as planned, moving toward Overlook Alpha to establish the sniper position that would provide crucial coverage during the asset extraction phase. The Overwatch position provided exceptional visibility of the target compound, but exposed her to the strengthening wind conditions that threatened shooting stability. Madison established her firing platform with methodical precision, anchoring her position against gusting winds while maintaining clear lines of sight to all critical areas. Through her advanced optics, she observed the compound security patterns, identifying guard positions and patrol timing with detailed accuracy. The intelligence asset, a high-value source with critical information about emerging terrorist networks, was being held in the central building, with at least 8 armed guards maintaining security protocols. Overwatch established, Madison reported through secure communication. 8 tangos confirmed. Asset position verified, central structure, East Room as indicated in briefing. Copy Overwatch, Reed acknowledged. Assault team in position, awaiting go, no-go assessment for wind conditions. Madison measured the current wind variables, calculating their effect on bullet trajectory at various engagement distances. The gusting patterns had intensified as predicted, creating challenging but still manageable shooting conditions. Wind assessment green, she confirmed. Current variables within operational parameters. Copy green assessment, Reed responded. Initiating breach in 3 minutes. Maintain Overwatch on north and east approaches. The operation proceeded with the synchronized precision that defined Delta missions. The assault team breached the compound perimeter without detection, neutralizing initial security positions with silenced weapons to maintain tactical surprise. Madison tracked potential reinforcement approaches through her scope, prepared to eliminate threats that might compromise the extraction. When the first complication emerged, unexpected guards approaching from the eastern ridge, Madison engaged with controlled precision. 2 shots, 2 eliminations at 800 meters despite gusting wind conditions. The suppressed Barrett made minimal noise, preserving the tactical advantage of surprise for the assault team. "East approach clear," she reported calmly, already shifting position to cover the northern security post that showed signs of alertness to potential intrusion. The operation continued with methodical efficiency until the critical moment. Asset recovery and extraction initiation. As Alpha Team emerged from the central building with the intelligence asset, perimeter alarms finally activated, alerting all remaining security forces to the breach. Emergency extraction required. Reed's voice communicated urgently. Multiple hostiles converging from unexpected western approach. Madison repositioned instantly, acquiring the new threat vector through her optics. At least 12 armed hostiles were moving toward the extraction route, threatening to cut off Alpha Team's escape corridor. The situation demanded immediate intervention from Overwatch position. "Western threat identified," she confirmed, engaging to clear extraction route. What followed demonstrated why Madison had qualified for Delta Force, despite institutional resistance. In conditions that would challenge even experienced military snipers, gusting winds, moving targets, and critical time pressure, she delivered a sequence of shots that defied conventional capability. The first 3 hostiles fell in rapid succession, precise shots despite their erratic movement patterns and the unstable wind conditions. When the remaining forces took cover, Madison adjusted her position to maintain engagement capability, using terrain features to predict their movement while compensating for increasingly difficult wind variables. "Maintain current extraction route," she advised the team. "Western approach will be clear in 30 seconds. True to her assessment, Madison systematically eliminated the remaining threats, blocking the primary extraction corridor. 10 shots, 10 eliminations despite conditions that would have rendered most snipers ineffective. The performance wasn't just impressive, it was the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Extraction route confirmed clear. Reed acknowledged as Alpha Team moved rapidly toward the designated helicopter pickup zone. "Outstanding work, Wright." The extraction helicopter approached through mountain passes as dawn began breaking over the rugged landscape. Madison maintained overwatch until confirming the team had reached the pickup zone safely, then executed her own exfiltration plan to reach the secondary extraction point. 16 hours later, Madison sat in the same briefing room where the mission had begun, now participating in the operational debrief with the rest of Alpha Team. Colonel Hernandez and Commander Taylor were present, evaluating mission execution and outcome for official assessment. "Operation Shadowfall achieved all primary objectives," Reed reported formally. "High-value intelligence asset successfully extracted with critical information intact. Minimal opposition casualties, no team injuries sustained." Commander Taylor reviewed the mission telemetry with professional assessment. The operation faced significant complications, particularly during the extraction phase, he noted. Intelligence assessment failed to identify the Western security force that threatened the primary extraction corridor. This was the moment where operational reality separated theory from practice, where excellence under pressure revealed itself most clearly. Taylor looked up from his notes, his expression revealing appropriate professional appreciation. Operator Wright's performance from overwatch position was exceptional, he stated for the official record. 10 threat neutralizations under adverse wind conditions cleared the extraction route and prevented potential mission failure. The accuracy demonstrated under those environmental variables exceeds standard operational expectations. Colonel Hernandez added her own assessment. The intelligence recovered from this operation has critical strategic value for ongoing counterterrorism initiatives. Alpha Team's successful execution, particularly the Overwatch element's performance, represents the highest standard of special operations capability. When the formal debrief concluded, team members dispersed to begin their recovery cycle before the next mission assignment. As Madison secured her equipment, Captain Reed approached with the straightforward manner that characterized his leadership style. "Those shots shouldn't have been possible under those conditions," he said simply. 20-knot gusting winds, moving targets, critical time pressure. Most qualified snipers would have struggled to hit half those targets. Madison acknowledged the assessment without false modesty. The shots had been exceptionally difficult, requiring instantaneous calculations and perfect execution under conditions that pushed the boundaries of physical possibility. "The team needed that extraction route cleared," she replied. Environmental variables were challenging but manageable. Reed studied her with the calculated assessment of an experienced commander. 6 months ago, there were those who questioned whether a woman belonged in Delta Force, he said candidly. Today's operation rendered that question permanently irrelevant. As Madison completed post-mission protocols and prepared for well-earned rest, she encountered Staff Sergeant Chen in the equipment room. The veteran sniper was reviewing mission footage, specifically the thermal imagery capturing her 10 critical shots during the extraction phase. "Exceptional wind reading," he commented, without looking up from the display. Especially on targets 7 and 9, wind shift was approximately 30 degrees between those engagements. Coming from Chun, this represented the highest form of professional recognition. He wasn't acknowledging her as the female operator, but as perhaps the finest precision shooter currently serving in Delta Force. The western ridgeline created predictable eddy patterns despite the gusting conditions, Madison explained, referencing the terrain features that had influenced her shooting calculations. Timing the shots between gust cycles was the critical factor. Chun nodded with genuine appreciation for the technical excellence. "Most wouldn't have recognized that pattern," he said simply, "or executed despite it." 3 days later, Madison received unexpected notification to report to Commander Taylor's office. Such summons typically indicated either significant commendation or serious concern, with little middle ground in the direct culture of special operations. She found Taylor reviewing operational reports, his expression revealing nothing as she entered. "Operator Wright," he acknowledged formally. "Your performance during Operation Shadowfall has generated attention at the highest levels of Joint Special Operations Command." Madison maintained professional composure, uncertain whether this development represented opportunity or complication. In the complex politics of military advancement, exceptional performance sometimes created as many challenges as opportunities. The precision demonstrated during the extraction phase has been classified as mission critical in official assessment. Taylor continued. Intelligence recovered from the asset has already disrupted 3 planned terror operations targeting American interests. He slid a document across the desk, official orders bearing the Joint Special Operations Command seal. "You're being temporarily reassigned to Advanced Sniper Training Division as Technical Advisor for Extreme Distance Precision under adverse conditions." The assignment carried significant implications. Madison would help develop training protocols based on her exceptional capabilities, potentially influencing the next generation of special operations snipers. More importantly, the position represented institutional acknowledgement that her skills transcended category, that excellence, had spoken a language that ultimately overcame resistance. Your experience integrating into Delta has implications beyond your individual career, Taylor added with unexpected candor. The qualification standards remain unchanged, but perceptions about who can meet those standards have evolved significantly. This wasn't just about Madison's career trajectory. It represented institutional transformation, catalyzed by performance that couldn't be denied. From breaking a general's arm in defiance of discrimination to influencing special operations, training protocols, her journey had become a force for systemic change through demonstrated excellence rather than policy mandates. Additional female candidates are currently in Delta selection, Taylor noted, confirming what Hernandez had mentioned earlier. Their assessment will be based solely on performance against established standards, as it should be. Madison recognized the profound significance. The barriers hadn't been removed through administrative decree, but dismantled by excellence, so exceptional it forced institutional evolution. Her 25 perfect shots at Highland Peak, 4 at maximum qualification distance, and 10 critical eliminations during Operation Shadowfall, had spoken a truth that transcended resistance. Capability ultimately matters more than category. Operator Wright, Taylor concluded with formal recognition. Your performance hasn't just contributed to mission success. It has demonstrated that excellence knows no gender. That may ultimately prove more significant than any single operation. As Madison left the commander's office with her new assignment orders, she reflected on the journey from that confrontation at Highland Peak to this moment of institutional transformation. Breaking the general's arm had been the catalyst, but it was the 25 perfect shots that followed which had begun dismantling barriers that limited human potential based on preconception rather than performance. Sometimes the most profound changes aren't achieved through confrontation alone, but through excellence so undeniable it makes resistance appear foolish. Madison's journey hadn't just opened doors for her individual career, it had created space for every qualified person who would follow, regardless of category or background. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle that had become the instrument of that change would continue its work, not just in eliminating threats to American security, but in eliminating barriers to human potential through performance that spoke a universal language. Excellence recognized knows no gender. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.